It was October 30th, the night before Halloween, and the fog hung so thick it felt alive. I'd just left my office in downtown Seattle after a long shift, tired and desperate for rest. But my 7-year-old son, Jaden, had been begging me all week for a pirate costume. He wanted the hat, the patch, and the sword. Nothing fancy, just something to make him feel part of the Halloween magic. My husband, Marcus, was home already but had an early morning shift, so I decided to take Jaden to the 24-hour store a few miles away and get it done. The fog outside was unnerving, swallowing the world whole. Streetlights turned into blurry halos, and the road ahead looked like smoke. Jaden's cheerful chatter from the back seat was the only warmth against the eerie quiet. We reached the store around 9:30 p.m. It was nearly empty, the aisles echoing with faint music. The Halloween section was almost cleared out, but we found a pirate costume in his size. Jaden grinned as he tried on the hat right there, and for a moment, all the fatigue melted away. We paid at the self-checkout, grabbed the bag, and stepped back into the cold. The parking lot stretched under dull yellow lamps, empty except for a few scattered cars. Jaden swung the bag in his hand, humming softly. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, quiet at first, crunching on gravel behind us. I turned, but the fog was too thick to see anything beyond a few feet. Maybe another shopper, I told myself, and kept walking. But the sound came again, faster, heavier, closer. My pulse kicked up. I squeezed Jaden's hand. Come on, buddy. Let's hurry. The steps matched ours perfectly, deliberate and steady. When we reached the car, I hit the unlock button with trembling fingers and opened the back door, pushing Jaden inside. The sound was right behind me now, no more than 10 feet away. I turned, and through the veil of fog came a tall man in dark clothes. His face was hidden behind a cheap rubber mask, rotting flesh stretched over lifeless eyes. He didn't speak. He just walked straight toward us. My breath caught. "Stay inside!" I yelled, slamming the door and jumping into the driver's seat. I locked everything just as his fist hit the window. The glass shook violently and Jaden screamed. The man raised something, a rock or wrench, and struck the window. It cracked instantly, webbing across the surface. I twisted the key, the engine roared, and I reversed hard, tires screeching as he stumbled backward. I sped off, heart hammering, glancing in the rearview mirror. He just stood there, frozen in the fog, the mask staring blankly after us. My hands trembled on the wheel. I called Marcus, trying to explain through shaking breaths. He told me to drive straight home. Jaden clutched his costume bag like a shield, silent the entire way. We pulled into the driveway 10 minutes later. Marcus was waiting on the porch, worry etched into his face. He hugged us both, checked the cracked window, and said we'd fix it tomorrow. We tried to calm down, locked everything, and turned on every light, but the house still felt like it was breathing with the fog outside. By midnight, exhaustion took over and we drifted off. At 3 a.m., a crash woke me, glass shattering downstairs. Marcus grabbed his rifle, loading it fast. "Stay here," he whispered, but I followed, clutching my phone. The air downstairs was freezing. The living room window was smashed, shards glinting across the carpet. Cold wind rushed through the opening, and outside, under the flickering streetlight, stood the same man in that rotting mask. He didn't move, he just watched the house. Marcus shouted, "Get the hell off our property!" and racked the rifle. I told the 911 operator someone had broken in, giving our address through trembling lips. The man didn't run. He only tilted his head slightly as if studying us. Then came flashing lights through the fog, 2 police cruisers pulling up fast. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting for him to get on the ground. He obeyed slowly. They cuffed him and led him to the car. When they pulled off the mask, my stomach dropped. It was Ryan Holt, Marcus's old co-worker, the one fired 6 months ago for showing up drunk. Marcus went pale. Ryan. What the hell? Ryan just glared at us as the cops shoved him into the cruiser. Later, the officers told us he'd been stalking me for months, watching from parking lots, following me home, lurking near my office. Marcus remembered him asking odd questions at work, making comments about me, but we never thought it was serious. He'd lost his job, his home, and his mind. He bought the mask earlier that day, probably planning to scare me, or worse. He's in jail now. We repaired the window, installed cameras, and I never go anywhere alone anymore. Jaden still went trick-or-treating the next night, but I held his hand every step, scanning every shadow. Because now I know some monsters don't hide under the bed. They wait in the fog. Halloween night always brings a strange energy to my neighborhood. For one evening, it feels like the rules don't apply. Kids wander through the dark, strangers knock on your door, and the streets come alive with masks and laughter. I usually enjoy it, even though I live alone in an old duplex on the edge of town. My porch is normally quiet, but that night it became a candy station. The rush started around 8:30, little kids in superhero costumes and princess dresses filling the steps with laughter and sugar-high excitement. But by 9:30 the crowd shifted. The little ones were gone, replaced by clusters of older teens who looked less interested in candy and more in trouble. I had just handed out my last handful of mini chocolate bars when 3 teenagers appeared at the end of the sidewalk. They weren't dressed like the usual crowd. No bright colors or fun costumes, just dark hoodies and cheap Halloween masks. One wore a faded Joker face, another a warped skull, and the third had a plain white mask with no expression at all. They didn't come up the steps. They just stood there, silent. I forced a polite smile. "Last call for candy," I said, trying to sound friendly. None of them spoke. The one in the white mask tilted his head slightly, and something about that small, calculated movement sent a shiver down my spine. "All right, fellas," I said lightly. "Show's over. Time to head home." Still nothing. I turned toward the door, tucking the empty candy bowl under my arm. As I stepped inside, I heard a sharp pop down the street, maybe fireworks, maybe something else, and the kid in the Joker mask started laughing, high-pitched and wrong. I closed the door fast, heart thudding. Through the window, I could still see them standing there, their masks catching the faint glow of the porch light. The white one was looking directly at my living room window now. That stare, it didn't feel playful. It felt like he was memorizing the layout of my house. I locked the door, double-checked it, and tried to laugh at myself for being paranoid. Probably just local teens trying to look tough. I told myself that over and over while cleaning up the kitchen, but the uneasy feeling didn't leave. By 11, the neighborhood was quiet. No laughter, no footsteps, just the hum of distant streetlights. I was wiping the counter when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A slow, deliberate scraping noise coming from the side of the house. Metal against concrete, I froze. Maybe an animal, I thought, but it came again, longer this time. Raccoons don't move like that. I crept toward the back door, phone in hand. The small window above the lock looked out into the yard. It was dark except for the faint halo from the motion sensor light. I could just make out the outline of the garden fence, but nothing else. The sound stopped. My pulse was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I opened my home security app and locked every door and window remotely, though I knew some of those old locks weren't strong. I should have upgraded them months ago. As I turned to head upstairs, I heard it, the faint creak of a door opening. The back door, the one I had just locked. I froze in the hallway, every nerve in my body screaming. The hinges groaned again, followed by slow, heavy footsteps across the floorboards. Whoever it was had just walked into my house. My throat tightened, and my legs felt weak. I pressed myself against the wall under the stairs, hiding in the shadows, barely breathing. The smell hit me next, cheap plastic and sweat. Whoever it was, they were still wearing a Halloween mask. The footsteps moved closer, each one deliberate, testing the boards. They reached the base of the staircase and paused. I held my phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. I needed to see who it was. Slowly, their silhouette started climbing the stairs, and as the head cleared the top landing, I made my move. I darted from the shadows and sprinted for the kitchen. I didn't dare look back. My mind was pure survival. I yanked open the drawer by the sink, rummaging past old batteries and tape until my fingers closed around my heavy-duty metal flashlight. I gripped it tight like a weapon. I knew I couldn't run out the front. The deadbolt was too loud. So instead, I slammed the broken back door shut, making as much noise as I could. "I'm calling the police!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the house. The footsteps upstairs stopped, then turned frantic. Whoever was up there started moving fast, heavy boots pounding across the floor. He was panicking. I could hear drawers slamming, windows rattling as he tried to find a way out. I ducked behind the kitchen island, pressed low, and hit call. My whisper was shaky. "Someone's in my house. Please hurry." The operator told me to stay hidden and stay on the line. I gripped the flashlight like a lifeline, my heart racing. Then came a crash from upstairs, glass breaking, maybe a window. He was trying to escape. Seconds later, I heard the thunder of footsteps on the stairs again. He was coming down. I stayed crouched, silent. As soon as he entered the kitchen, his back turned slightly toward me, I swung with everything I had. The flashlight connected with his leg, a sickening crack followed by a strangled yell. He fell hard, mask shifting just enough for me to see a flash of stubble and a terrified human eye underneath. This wasn't a kid. It was a grown man. He tried to crawl, dragging his leg, but I swung again, catching his shoulder. He collapsed, gasping. I backed away, shining the flashlight directly into his face. "Stay down!" I shouted, voice trembling. My arms ached, adrenaline flooding through me. Then I heard it, the sirens. They grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights splashed across my front windows. The intruder tried to whisper something, but I couldn't hear. Moments later, the front door burst open, police shouting commands. "Put your hands up!" I dropped the flashlight and raised my arms. "He's in here!" He broke in. The next few minutes blurred together. Officers swarming the kitchen, the man being dragged out, cuffs snapping shut. When they removed the mask, one of the cops looked at me with disbelief. "You know who this is?" I didn't, then he said it. "Derek Lane. We've dealt with him before. Burglary. Assault." My stomach twisted. Later, I found out he was the father of one of those teenagers who had come to my porch earlier that night. The white mask, the same one his son had been wearing. He'd borrowed it to blend in, thinking no one would suspect an adult in costume on Halloween. By sunrise, the adrenaline had faded, leaving me shaking and sore. The police were gone, the door taped off, and the house quiet again. I sat on my porch with a blanket over my shoulders, watching the sky turn gray. Across the street, neighbors were sweeping up candy wrappers, completely unaware of what had happened. Halloween was over, but something inside me had changed forever. I used to love the sound of laughter and masks at my door. Now every knock in the dark makes my skin crawl. I'll never hand out candy again. I was 10 years old that Halloween, living in a quiet neighborhood in Bristol with rows of old brick houses and neatly trimmed hedges that always made me feel safe. My parents were busy taking care of my little sister, who had a bad cold, so for the first time, they let me go trick-or-treating alone. "Stay on our street, Ethan, and be home by 8:30, my mum said. I promised I would. I wore a torn-up zombie costume with fake blood from the pound shop and carried an old pillowcase for sweets. It felt like freedom, walking under the orange glow of street lamps, hearing the laughter of other kids echo down the road. At first, everything was perfect. I ran from house to house, my bag getting heavier with every door. People smiled, gave me candy, and wished me a happy Halloween. But by 8 o'clock, the streets began to empty. The laughter faded. I wandered a little farther than I should have, down a side street I didn't recognize, where the lights were dim and the air felt colder. Most of the houses looked abandoned. Peeling paint, broken windows, overgrown gardens. I thought it was a shortcut back home. I was wrong. Halfway down the street stood an old Victorian house with ivy crawling up its walls and a flickering porch light that barely worked. An elderly woman stood on the porch holding a tray of biscuits. She waved at me with a trembling hand. "Come here, love. I've got some treats just for you," she called out, her voice frail but sweet. I hesitated, but she smiled, and something in her tone reminded me of my gran. She looked lonely, harmless. So, I walked up the creaky wooden steps. She had thin white hair tied back with a ribbon and wore a faded floral dress that looked older than the house itself. Her eyes were pale blue, but there was something off about them, too bright, almost feverish. "I'm Mrs. Hargrove," she said softly. "What's your name, dear?" I told her I was Ethan, and she smiled wider. "You look just like my grandson, Tommy," she said. I laughed awkwardly, taking a biscuit from her tray. It tasted strange, like flour and dust, but I didn't want to be rude. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Come inside, love. I've got more sweets in the kitchen and it's cold out here." I knew I should have said no, but she sounded so kind, so normal. I followed her into the house. The air inside was heavy with the smell of damp wood and something sour underneath it. The living room was cluttered, stacks of old newspapers, faded curtains, broken furniture. There were no Halloween decorations, no lights, just shadows. She shuffled ahead into the kitchen, humming a song under her breath. "Kids don't visit anymore," she said. "Tommy used to love my stories. He's been gone so long." I nodded politely, edging toward the door. "I should go," I said. But before I could move, she turned, her expression changing completely. Her eyes went wide and glassy. "You can't go yet, Tommy. It's not safe." "I'm not Tommy," I whispered, but she didn't listen. Her voice became shaky but firm. "Don't lie to your nanny. You always play tricks." I tried to step back, but she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her grip was like steel. "Let me go!" I shouted. She smiled, tilting her head. "We'll play a game just like old times." Then she locked the kitchen door with a heavy click. Panic rose in my chest. I pulled against her, but she dragged me toward the basement door. The stairs creaked as we went down, the air growing colder, damper, darker. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering weakly. The basement looked more like a cell. Bare walls, a small cot, a rusted chain bolted to the floor. "This is your room, Tommy," she said softly. "You'll stay here until you remember." Before I could scream, she snapped the metal cuff around my ankle. It bit into my skin, cold and tight. I cried and begged, but she just smiled and patted my head. "Nanny will fetch your tea soon." Then she went upstairs, humming that same haunting tune, and the door closed with a final thud. I screamed for help until my throat burned, but no one heard me. The house was too far from the main road, the windows boarded shut. The only sound was the scratching of mice behind the walls. Time lost meaning in that cellar. She brought me food, soup from a tin, stale bread, and talked to me like I really was her grandson. She told stories about the accident, about how Tommy left her, and how she wasn't going to lose him again. Her voice cracked between love and madness. I started to understand. Her real grandson had died years ago, and she had never recovered. Her mind had broken, leaving her trapped in the past. Sometimes she forgot to feed me. Sometimes she forgot I was even there. I tried to use my phone, but it was dead. I counted the days by how many times the light flickered. I thought I'd die there, chained to that old metal bed. Then one morning I heard it, banging on the front door. "Police, open up!" Mrs. Hargrove screamed from upstairs. "They're coming for you, Tommy. They want to take you away." I heard heavy boots thudding through the house, men shouting. The door burst open and flashlights cut through the dark. I shielded my eyes, sobbing. "I'm here. Please help me!" They ran down the stairs, freed me from the chain, and wrapped me in a blanket. I remember the warmth of one officer's voice as he said, "You're safe now, son. We've got you." Later, I learned that my parents had called the police the same night I disappeared. A neighbor had seen me walking toward the old house. The officers said Mrs. Hargrove had been reported years ago for wandering the streets talking to herself, but no one knew she still lived there. She was taken away, diagnosed with severe delusional psychosis. She really believed I was her grandson brought back from the dead. I'm 15 now and I still live in Bristol, but I've never gone trick-or-treating again. Every Halloween night I lock my window and try to forget the smell of that damp basement. But sometimes when the fog rolls in thick over the houses, I swear I can hear her humming outside, soft and shaky, calling for Tommy to come home.